I often tell people in my face-to-face coaching that malignant narcissists and many toxic individuals utilize their significant other as an emotional regulator. What I mean by that is the fact that somebody that's a malignant narcissist is very disconnected from their emotions. Doesn't mean they don't have emotions. They have emotions, but they don't feel them as if they're coming from within. They're very disconnected. It's almost as if they're feeling them in an external way as opposed from an internal way. We're going to talk about why they're like that and how you can make sure that you stop being their emotional regulator. So why are toxic people like that? Why are malignant narcissists unable to feel their feelings? Why do they project them onto their family members? Well, it all has to do with their false image, right? Narcissists can only survive if that false image is supported, if that false image is believed by others, validated by others. Unfortunately, that false image really is false because the image that they have of themselves is of perfection. And we live in an imperfect world. There is nobody on this earth that can claim to be perfect. But narcissists, they have to see themselves that way. And so what happens is when less desirable qualities such as shame, insecurity, vulnerability, embarrassment, selfishness, anger, whenever those less desirable qualities come up inside of them, right? Because that's how it works. Our emotions come from within. Because it is not in harmony with their false image. In other words, malignant narcissists are suffering severe cognitive dissonance, right? The thought that they're perfect is out of harmony with these things that are coming up inside of them, because the reality is they're not perfect. They're imperfect. And the sad part is having those qualities that are less desirable to the toxic person, they're normal things that come up in imperfect individuals. But they refuse to allow themselves to be a normal, imperfect individual. They hold themselves up to a perfection that doesn't exist except in their mind. So when they're in that cognitive dissonance, that state of cognitive dissonance where they're seeing a quality in themselves, let's say it's shame. Let's say they're doing something and deep within they know they're a bad person. They know that what they're doing is bad, right? Next thing you know, they are accusing you of being bad. You're such a bad person. You have awful motives. Everything you do has a bad motive. They'll say something like that out of nowhere, even if you weren't doing anything. Sadly, when you don't understand narcissistic abuse, and this is the reason why myself and so many other people put this information out there, because when you don't understand that, you begin to think, oh my God, what did I do? This doesn't make sense. What am I doing wrong? When the truth is that at that moment, what is really happening is that the toxic person is having cognitive dissonance, and to resolve it, they are using you as an emotional regulator. Let's talk about how they do that. Let's use anger as an emotion that's coming up in the toxic person, right? Anger comes up in everybody. There's not one person that I've ever known or that has ever existed that has not felt anger. But narcissists, malignant narcissists, they view that as a less desirable quality. That's why in the middle of a fight, they'll be veins bulging and screaming and foaming at the mouth saying, I'm not angry. It's also why they continue the fight, especially if you're calm, especially if you're reasonable, especially if you're doing your best to be a peace seeker. They will continue the abuse until you crack. Then when you crack, that's where the emotional regulation comes in. See, as they've been angry and they know they're handling it the wrong way, they know that they're behaving in ways that are inappropriate and absolutely less than perfect, right? They know that on some kind of subconscious level, but it's out of harmony with their false image, so they need you. They need you to display what they inside are feeling. That's the external way that they feel it, right? They need to provoke you to feel that anger. That's why they wait you out. That's why they don't stop until you explode. And then it's almost like they're like a baby that's just been burped, right? I've used that illustration before. You know, baby's all cranky, you burp the baby's happy. Well, the narcissist is furious, out of control. You're trying to be reasonable, you're trying to work through the problem in a mature way, and it's not until you break and you lose control that they calm down. They have transported their emotions that they don't want to have, their undesirable qualities. They have seen you display them, and then what happens in their mind is they're like, oh, I'm not angry. I'm not the one angry. See, I knew it was him or it was her. They're the one that's angry. Okay, I'm good. I'm okay. My false image is intact. That's what happens in the mind of the narcissist. When you don't understand that, it is so confusing. It can drive anyone crazy. It really can. Because on top of the projection, they're using gaslighting. And they're spinning your mind in circles until you no longer know what behavior is correct, what behavior is acceptable. If you are the problem, what's going on? You lose your ability, you lose your compass as to what is healthy behavior and what is not. When you've been accused of something for so long, and when your own reality has been denied and spun in circles for so long, it's really difficult to hold on to your mental capacities. It really is. So how can you stop? How can you stop being used as an emotional regulator? Okay, in other words, how can you stop allowing the toxic person to take whatever undesirable quality that they have inside of themselves that they don't want to feel? How can you stop them from putting it inside of you? Well, you can't control the narcissist. You have to let go of the thought that they're going to stop their behavior. The only way you're going to stop being an emotional regulator has nothing to do with them changing. It has to do with certain things that you need to come to understand and begin applying. The first thing is to know how to handle projection. Okay, so if somebody is projecting onto you, and you now realize it because you're observing it, right? The observe, don't absorb. You see, oh, okay, they're trying to put their emotion into me. They're projecting. When a toxic person accuses you of something that is totally off the wall, that in your head you're like, how and where did that even come from? That makes no sense. Or you're thinking, that's not me, that's actually you, which you're right about. At those moments, so many people make the mistake of trying to show their perspective to the toxic person as if the toxic person is going to see their perspective, understand, and everything's going to be resolved. When you don't understand narcissistic abuse, the mistake that people make is they try to explain to the narcissist their perspective. Oh, you think that, but really it's this. And they'll place all this evidence, which is very clear in their mind. 1 + 1 is 2. They expect the toxic person to be like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. All good. And it doesn't happen because the toxic person doesn't care about truth. The toxic person doesn't want you to come and show them that they are the ones that are actually angry, that they are the ones that are projecting. No, they don't want truth. They just need an emotional regulator. They need to put their emotion in somebody. So when you start explaining, you're putting yourself in a position that is going to cause more drama. You're going to feel more drained, and the toxic person is going to get what they want. They're going to get you into an emotional state that makes them feel better. Their negativity will now be in you, and they'll be able to take your peace, the peace that you had before. They'll be able to feel better because, after all, they've just dumped their negativity on you. So rather than falling into that, you have to recognize that expecting an unreasonable person to be reasonable is setting yourself up to just wind up emotionally drained. So remind yourself that it is in your power. It is in your power to validate your own reality. If the toxic person in your life is flying off the handle and is extremely angry, and you're like, wow, you're so angry, and they twist it and turn it and they're like, you're the one that's angry, you're the one that's the problem, you're the one that's doing this and that, rather than defend yourself, right, and try to prove your reality to somebody that doesn't want to see it, you can simply say, well, okay, that's your perspective. Yeah, I choose to see it differently. They're hoping that you get sucked into a drama battle so that you wind up in a negative emotional state and they can have that exchange. Rather than doing that, you're putting a stop. And you're showing that that's their perspective and this is yours, and they're on two different planes. And that you're not going to allow that perspective to be your own perspective. Something else that's helpful so that you can stop being an emotional regulator is to really get back to you. Get the focus back on you again. And I know some people may hear that, especially if they've been through narcissistic abuse, and think, oh my God, that's so selfish. How dare you think of you? You've been trained to never think of you. I get that. The problem with that is that until you learn how to know who you are, what is your self-identity, what are your feelings, what are your values, how do you see the world, what is your worldview, without realizing it, the toxic person will be dictating those things to you, who you are, how you see things. And if you don't have a strong hold on who you are, you're going to be molded into thinking you're what they say you are, and you're going to begin looking at yourself the way they see you, which is, now this is the way they see you. They see you as the carrier of everything they hate in themselves. That's why you're the emotional regulator. When they don't feel good, they make you not feel good. They feel better. For anyone that doesn't believe me, who doesn't understand this, think for a little bit about times when you were happy. When you were happy, did the toxic person share that happiness with you, or did they do something to take it away? When you were sad or upset about something that happened externally, did they build you up, or did they seem to kick you when you were down? Or if they were angry and it had nothing to do with you, did they handle their emotion on their own, or did they always have to fling it onto somebody else and accuse somebody else of what they were doing in order to resolve the problem? If those are things that are happening in your home, then you are being an emotional regulator for someone else. And no one was put on this earth to emotionally regulate another human being. We all have to own our strengths, own our weaknesses, own our imperfections. We all are responsible for our own mistakes, our own goals, everything that makes us us. We are responsible for that, not somebody else. Once you stop and you break the cycle of being an emotional regulator for the narcissist, the awesome thing is you begin to feel more empowered. Because when you're an emotional regulator and you're carrying the emotions of the narcissist, right? They're putting everything in you. They're putting their toxicity, you're absorbing it. When that's happening, you don't feel empowered. You don't even feel like yourself. But when you begin to break free of that, you start to feel more empowered. Now, I will warn you, the toxic person won't like this new empowerment that you have, because without that emotional regulator, they are forced in a state of cognitive dissonance where they think they're perfect, but they're seeing their imperfections, and they don't have anybody to throw that imperfection on. What some will do, sometimes the children can wind up being a target, or if there are no children, the abuse can escalate because they're retaliating against your self-empowerment. They don't want you to be empowered. They want you to continue to serve the purpose that they need you for. So, in other words, it gets worse before it gets better. But I want to encourage you that by doing this, you will feel a shift inside of you. You will feel more like you. In fact, you'll probably wonder when you start doing this and you start breaking out of that, you'll probably think, why was I acting that way? Why? It won't even make sense once you get back to you. Because what happens is the narcissist makes those changes in you. They start using you as an emotional regulator slowly, little by little, until before you know it, you don't even know who you are, and your sole purpose in life is to try to keep them happy as their emotional regulator, and no one deserves to live life that way.